Okay, so Pope Sylvester II wasn't born Pope Sylvester II. He was born Gerbert, which I think is a wonderful name. And Gerbert was ahead of his time. He was coming up to the turn of the first millennium, and he was a Renaissance man. He was bright, he was sharp as a tack, he was interested in education and learning. He was kind of a humanist, all things considered. And in his time as Pope, he championed things like the Arabic numeral system. Seemed like that would be much more sensible than the Roman one with all the I's and the V's. He brought back a lost technology. He brought back the abacus. People weren't using them, and he was like, "This is really sensible. It's just really sensible." And notable among other things that he decreed as Pope was that maybe the cardinals shouldn't be going to sex workers on a regular basis. And so, as you can imagine, the cardinals didn't like him very much. And this is the story that the cardinals told about Pope Sylvester II. There was once a young boy by the name of Gerbert. What a ridiculous name. We already knew from the start with a name like Gerbert, he was going to be a wrong 'un. And Gerbert, ooh, he had ideas. He was a poor lad, but he had ideas way above his station. He wanted to learn. He wanted power. He wanted luxury. And he had such great hungering ambition. And so Gerbert went out into the world to learn, and he went and travelled to all of the great masters and absorbed their knowledge, sucking it up like a leech until he was fat with what they could teach him, and when there was nothing left, he dropped them and moved on to the next. And he learned the sciences, and he learned the humanities, he learned arts and culture and religious history, and eventually there was only one thing left to learn. There was one teacher that Gerbert hadn't been to, and this was a sorcerer of the dark arts. Because the way Gerbert saw it, well, there was all this infernal power down there in the depths of hell, all of this amazing energy that was an untapped resource. Surely, if you wanted power, why were you not going and using this? So Gerbert went to speak to the sorcerer, and he explained his ambitions, his desires to shape the world as he saw fit, and he asked if he could learn at this sorcerer's feet, and the sorcerer said, "Absolutely not. You're what, 18, 19? I have been studying painstakingly these rituals, these secret, arcane, profane knowledges for my entire life, and I have collected them lovingly and delicately. And even for me, these powers are potent, they are dangerous, they are not to be used rashly, and certainly not to be given heedlessly to a young mind. No, I will not teach you." And Gerbert went, "No worries, I respect that." And he turned and made his way out of the sorcerer's house, and he seized that fucker. Why won't he let me learn? Well, he must have the knowledge somewhere. It must be somewhere in this house. There must be the key to what I seek. And so Gerbert snuck around the walls of the sorcerer's house, trying to work out what the weak spot was, trying to work out where he could infiltrate, to worm in and get this knowledge for himself. And as he passed around to the gates of the rose garden, he found it. The sorcerer's beautiful daughter. And Gerbert, he was so wise and so clever, and he knew stories from across the world, and he knew how to play instruments, he knew how to dance, he knew how to dress himself up well. And Gerbert turned up at the gates of the rose garden day after day with sweet treats and scented poetry, and slowly over time he won the heart of the sorcerer's daughter. And one evening, when they were twined in each other's arms underneath the sweeping willow tree with the moon rising fat above them, he said, "My darling, my beloved, you are so wonderful. You are so magnificent. In fact, I think that the only person who could have produced you is your father, for he is indeed so wise, so clever, so full of learning." And she said, and he said, "Where is the seat of your father's knowledge? Where has all of this amazing wisdom come from? How does he keep it? How does he do it?" And she went, "Well, my father has been collecting his knowledge all of his lifetime, and he stores it in his grimoire, in his grammary, his spell book." "I see. Well, that would make perfect sense. A spell book is a very sensible place to keep all of your hidden knowledge. Tell me where. Where does he keep this spell book?" I mean, I'm just asking because clearly, it's a very important thing. I wouldn't want it to think that it was just, lying around slapdash anywhere. It's not just lying around slapdash anywhere, is it? She went, no, absolutely not. No, my father keeps it in a chest which is locked, and the only key is hung around his neck at all times. And that chest is hidden under the floorboards, under his bed. So he is sleeping above it every night. There is no way that anybody can get that knowledge. You don't need to worry. It's perfectly safe. And he went, "You are so right, my darling, and my soul is soothed. Perfectly safe." Well, the next night, a stranger turned up at the sorcerer's house, a wealthy client in fine robes and a very bushy beard and big waggly eyebrows. "Hello, I am here to talk about procuring your services. Why don't we do this over wine?" And the wealthy benefactor produced a great big jar of fine wine. And so the sorcerer and the merchant talked through the night, and the sorcerer's head started to get dizzy, and he said, "I am so sorry. We will have to continue this talk in the morning. Clearly, the wine has gotten the better of me." And the sorcerer made his way to bed and slipped into a pleasant and calm, drugged sleep. A deep sleep that he would not be roused from, as the merchant ripped off his fake beard and eyebrows, and Gerbert went and slipped the key from the sorcerer's neck and went and pulled up the floorboards under the bed and pulled out the chest and unlocked it, and there was the magician's spell book. But as Gerbert looked at this book, he could see that there was an enchantment laid upon it, a curse, a protection, that this book would be able to be tracked anywhere over land, anywhere over sea. And Gerbert went, "I'm willing to test that." And he turned with the book under his arm and he ran. He made his way out of the sorcerer's house, down through town. He got onto the fastest horse at the inn and he rode. He rode and he rode and he rode until the horizon had disappeared and beyond. But the next morning, when the sorcerer awoke and saw the great big whacking hole in his bedroom floor, he knew what had happened. He started to cast his potent magics, and like a little Google Maps line, he could see the way that the thief had gone. And so he got onto his fast horse and gave chase. And the more that Gerbert travelled, the closer and closer the sorcerer gets. And so Gerbert gives up on his horse and he hops onto a boat and sails across to another continent. Let's try it and see. And of course, when the magician gets to the seashore, he can see now the line has changed from red to blue. Take the ferry. And he's like, right, okay. And so he gets himself a boat and he rows after Gerbert, and Gerbert arrives on the far shore and he looks back and he can see there's a little boat. "You scoundrel!" What am I going to do? What am I going to do? I need to get rid of this curse. I need to find a loophole. I need to find a way of breaking this magic. I need to find somewhere that isn't land and isn't sea. And it came to him in a flash of divine inspiration. I don't know if we can call it that. Gerbert ran. He ran through the seaside town that he had come to. He ran until he got to a bridge. A bridge maybe with interesting glass sides on it, going over a tidal river. And he hopped over to the other side of the bridge. He climbed down underneath, and there, hidden, he hung, the book in one arm and the other hand holding tight to the underside, his feet dangling above the water but not touching it, there in a place that was not land and was not water. And he listened, he could hear the magician approaching like an enraged storm, rolling over the countryside. The clouds darkened and the magician passed over the bridge and beyond. And the book shone with a golden light and the enchantment crumbled away. The curse had been broken. And so now, getting back up onto the bridge, Gerbert was ready to read this book, yes! So he went and found himself a nice quiet little coffee shop and he sat down. Maybe I need to take this somewhere a little bit quieter. So he went and found himself a hotel room and he started to pore through this book of demonic knowledge. And because Gerbert was a 19-year-old boy, when he got to the page that had an awful lot of very naked, very curvy figures on it, he went, yes, that one right there. What are we doing? And he cast a spell to summon up for himself a sexy, sexy succubus. Yes, he did. And there Gerbert and the succubus had a marvellous time. And over many nights entwined in sticky sheets, the succubus explained to Gerbert what it was like down in hell and, you know, a couple of the demons that she knew and some of the knowledge that was in the book where it wasn't quite clear what was going on, and indeed some things that weren't written in the book, and explained to him what he could do to go and make a deal with the devil for basically whatever he wanted. And so Gerbert did the appropriate rituals. And he made his way down into hell and he spoke with the devil, and the devil said, what is it that you desire from me, that you would trade your immortal soul? And he went, what I want is simply to be the most powerful man in the world. And the devil went, that is easy. And so they signed the deal, and the devil clicked his fingers, and in a flash of sulphur, Gerbert found himself waking up on the comfiest bed that he had ever slept on, plush, thick sheets, and he could hear church bells ringing outside, balmy sunlight coming through the window, the singing of birds, and as he sat up, there were servants coming to attend upon his every whim, but they weren't calling him Gerbert, they were calling him Pope Sylvester. The devil had transformed Gerbert into the Pope, so say the cardinals. And Gerbert was having the best time as Pope. It was really fantastic. He was the head of the church, so he could tell anybody in the church what to do, and they had to do it. But more than that, he was at the side of all of the kings and queens and rulers of every land, whispering in their ear, slowly watching as what he wanted to do to shape the world came to pass. And in the meantime, I mean, I don't know if you know this, but popes live pretty well if they want to, and he was eating the best food, drinking the best wine, sleeping on these beautiful beds, wearing fantastic outfits and big, tall, pointy hats. And the only caveat to the deal that he had made with the devil is that he must never, for all that he was alive, hear Mass in Jerusalem. If he heard that, the devil would come personally to collect his soul. He's like, well, that's fine. I'm the Pope. I'll just conveniently find ways to cancel my tours to Jerusalem. Oh, what a shame. Oh, I can't make it this time. Sorry, I'm washing my dog. And so he was able to indulge in all of the luxury, all of the power. And don't forget, he still had his sexy, sexy succubus to come home to in the evenings, which none of the other cardinals had, I will remind you. But the thing is, when you're the most powerful man in the world, it turns out that actually comes with a fair bit of responsibility. There's a lot of structure. There's a lot of things that you have to do. There are a lot of responsibilities that you have to fulfill, and you have an entourage around you who do a lot of the donkey work, and basically they shuffle you from place to place and get you in the Pope mobile and make sure that you're dressed and make sure that your coffee is made the way that you want it. And so after a while, Gerbert was just sort of wandering through this perfect life in a bit of a distracted haze. Everything was just marvellous. Where are we going now? Oh, great, cool. We're going to go to a mass. That sounds lovely. Why not? I'll come and have a sit down and listen to this lovely mass while I think about how amazing my life is. And as Gerbert was sat in this particular mass on this particular day, suddenly something shifted in his stomach. Something started to feel wrong. He didn't know exactly what it was, but now there were shivers starting to make their way up his legs and his arms, and sweat was pouring down the back of his neck, and his heart was starting to pound in his chest. He didn't know why, but his body was suddenly terrified. What on earth could have happened? And suddenly, out of that fog, he managed to find some focus, looking around. What is it? What is this threat that my body has noticed that I haven't? And he looked at the church. There wasn't anything particularly weird about this church, was there? There was the priest giving mass. There were the Stations of the Cross. There were the congregation. And there was the door of the church. And there above the door of the church was the name of the church. And this church was the Holy Cross of Jerusalem. Pope Sylvester had heard Mass in Jerusalem, and as the knowledge fell into his head like a stone, the door of that church transformed into a burning, spiralling, sulphurous portal into the depths of hell itself, and out stepped the devil with all of his imps and monsters, and he said, "I've come to collect, motherfucker," and he stormed into the church, and his beasts fell upon Gerbert, and they ripped him into meaty chunks. His liver made it all the way to the altar. His eyes were bounced from side to side against the walls of the church like ping pong balls. His entrails were thrown up to string the, what are they called? The arches, like terrible Christmas decorations. And finally, in amongst all of this pile of squelching viscera, the devil reached down and plucked out a small, grey, shriveled, squirming soul and tucked it into his breast pocket and made his way back through the portal with, I imagine, all of the congregation just going, "What just happened?" And so it is said to this day that the bones of Pope Sylvester II are cursed, and that if a pope is on their deathbed and you go to the tomb where those bones are lain, you might hear them rattling as an augur and an omen that the Pope's death is imminent. And that is the story that the cardinals said that I have brought to you this night. Thank you very much, everyone.
Ladies and gentlemen, Amelia Armande!